Oh, got one more coming on through. So we'll let Josh, I'll let you admit them. So first of all, everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for giving up your time at 6:30 on a Wednesday. I know there's plenty of other things that you could be doing, but you're here with us, and we really want to just honor that time, and we want to be just express our gratitude for you being a part of this journey with us for the longest time, for as long as I guess I've been involved at Proform University. We've had a number of requests for this particular webinar series to come on out. And we are so glad finally to be able to say that, yes, we are doing it today. And we've got the one and only Geordie Morpeth here presenting on just training and menstruation, which is a really massive topic that I believe that not only, like, guess, women have to deal with, but I guess we have to deal with as practitioners and as allied health practitioners as a challenge that we have to be able to help people with. And the fact that we've got someone like yourself, Geordie, here be able to present on this sort of stuff is a real gift, and we really hope that it's going to be of tremendous value to you and potentially even your potential pursuits in the future. So I know you're a gun, and Josh knows you're a gun, and we're going to leave things over to you, ladies and gentlemen, for everyone at home. Geordie Morpeth.
Thank you. Okay, so I am super excited about this topic. Some of you already know that I've had like a crazy women's health journey myself. So I didn't have my period for 3 years and got labeled so many different things. And then was told I'd have to do IVF to have babies. I fell pregnant naturally without a period, which was wild. And then I had a wild journey in between then and falling pregnant with my current baby now as well. So I only had one period in between that. So I've had one period in the past 5 years or something, and nobody was able to give me any answers or anything. And hormones were all over the place. And I just felt like there's not enough research in this area, and there's still not, which I'll touch on slightly. But I just want to try and make women as empowered as possible and try and bring in like research and give everybody else the resources, whether it's women going through it themselves, other physios, EPs, coaches, or even just the males that have women in their life, which you all do at some point. So this is why I'm so passionate about this area. I want to try and fill the gap in this space as well. So today, hey Josh, I can't change the the slides. So today we'll just be going through 3 key things that you can focus on to help around menstrual cycle and training. So if you remember these 3 things, these will be the best tips. Like I said, there's not much research in this area, but some recent studies came out saying that 26% of the population menstruate, and there's only 4% of research in like athletes in that are females. So only 4% of research that's being done in sports science is based on females, which is just crazy considering. So there's a massive gap in the research. So what we're going to go through today is a cycle, but an average cycle. So we need to take that into consideration as well. So step 1 is understanding your cycle. And that's why I emphasized the average cycle. So here we have a normal cycle. You can see that the average is about 28 days. The average is anywhere between 21 to 35 days. And that occurs when a woman is between 11 to 14 years. So when you're getting like a client's history or you're speaking to your patient, you can ask them not only about their menstruation now, but also what it has been like previously, i.e. when they received their period. Average period bleeds do go from 4 to 7 days. So again, that's average. And the flow should be about 30 to 60 mils. So anything outside of that is considered abnormal. And then again, you can also take into consideration clots and things like that. So like anything more than like a 20-cent piece or anything that's like super dark or anything is something also you can be tracking, which I'll go into later. But here you have the average cycle. So day 1 is the day of menstruation, usually lasts for 4 to 7 days, like I said. You then begin the follicular phase, and here you can follow the hormones. So they're the lowest during menstruation. During the follicular phase, your hormones are all starting to increase, and you can see the hormones at the bottom there. hormones and energies peaking in the ovulation, which typically occurs around day 14. And like I said, typically for some people, this could be at day 10. For some people, this can be later as well. And then your luteal phase is a little bit longer per se, and that can go from days 14 to 28, depending on when ovulation does occur. And again, this is just a regular cycle. So again, you can have hormonal variations and fluctuations. Again, this isn't identifying everybody. So if you've just come off the pill, if you have PCOS, if you have any other hormonal imbalances, or you're breastfeeding, but you have just gotten your period back, these are a guide, but hormonal variations will be different as well. So now we understand what the hormones look like. Understanding what is actually happening during the cycle can help as well. So this is a little diagram of what is happening to your beautiful uterus and your ovaries throughout the month of being a female. So you have your menstruation, which is the shedding of the uterus. So I like to think of this almost like a surgery that happens every month. So everything is shedding out. So you're losing that lining basically. You have your eggs maturing in the follicular phase, and then you'll have an egg that is released, which is your ovulation. And then that egg will either be fertilized or it'll be dissolved. So if it's fertilized, once the wall thickens in luteal phase, that's when implantation can occur and a pregnancy is successful. Otherwise, it will begin to shed and it'll get ready for the cycle to begin again. So understanding the cycle is one of the key steps to then being able to track your cycle to implement it to your training. So that's step one. You actually need to know what's happening. Step two is tracking your cycle. And this is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of women miss. If you are on any type of contraception, this does change slightly because if you're on the pill, you might be having a withdrawal bleed, or if you have some type of IUD, you may not be having any bleed, or you might have abnormal bleeding throughout the month as well. So again, we're going off an average cycle. So how can you track? There are so many apps out there now. Personally, when I've used apps, my favorite one is Kindara, just because I like the layout of it. But you can even just use Apple Health. So whether you're just a female tracking your own cycle, or if you have patients that need to track their cycle, I get all of my patients tracking on an app. And that just makes it so easy that you can overview the month and you can go back day to day, have a look at symptoms, have a look at anything else that might be happening. Say they get pelvic pain consistently, and then you actually figure out it's consistently the same time ovulation occurs each month, but they had never noticed that before. So you're able to use the data caught in the app to then apply to other things that are going on as well. It does seem like a lot to be tracking every single day. Like, I don't want you just tracking on bleeding days, but every single day of the month. But it takes 2 seconds in the morning. Now, for the apps to be the most consistent, you want to be taking something called basal body temperature. And all that is before you get out of your bed in the morning, like as soon as you wake up, you want to put the thermometer underneath your tongue and you just want to hold that to take your temperature. So what you will see is just before like your ovulation, you'll see like a little dip in your temperature, and then you'll see a spike as ovulation occurs. So like we said previously, when we were going through the cycle, ovulation can occur around day 14, but the best way to understand when your ovulation is, whether you are trying to conceive or trying to avoid pregnancy, the best way to understand is actually using your temperature. It will be the most consistent way. So you want to make sure that you're doing that before you move or before you do anything as well, because that's going to be most consistent. Next thing that you want to track, and again, track this throughout the entire month, is cervical mucus. So when you're looking at your cervical mucus, there'll generally be 2 types of cervical mucus. So you have your non-fertile, so when you're not in a chance to fall pregnant, And this isn't just like day of ovulation. This can be days leading up to ovulation and days post ovulation as well. So, sorry, when you're fertile. So your fertile will look like an egg white consistency, so almost clear, and it'll be like stretchy and slippery as well. And I know this sounds interesting, but literally get like your patient to be having a look at the consistency when they wipe as well. Usually you can just tell from your undies anyway. And then your non-fertile is thick and sticky, and it'll literally be more of like a milky or yellowy kind of consistency as well. So this will be really helpful, A, when you're trying to conceive or not conceive, but then B as well to help you understand your cycle and where you're at, especially if you do have other pains, like I said, pelvic pain, lower back pain, any type of like stress incontinence or anything. This is really great to understand too. And then finally, you have symptoms. So again, this isn't just symptoms during your bleed, but some people actually have worse symptoms during ovulation and can literally feel the ovulation occur. So that can be headaches, bloating, cramping, back pain. It can be the way that their bowels move. So bowel consistency due to prostaglandins, which is what makes everything relax, can increase at certain times of their cycle as well, plus so many other symptoms. Like it is endless. And if we just went off an average cycle, I'm sure so many other people would have other symptoms as well. So we want to track these and we want to try and look for any patterns. But to identify any patterns, you really do need to be doing this for at least a minimum of 3 months, which seems like a long time to be consistently trying to understand something before you can draw connections. But I would even say 6 months plus before you can start to pull things together. And some women have like an irregular, regular cycle. So you'll see that it's irregular from month to month, but it'll form some kind of pattern over the 12 months as well. So that's why we like to say the 3 months as a minimum. If you do get any red flags, we do want to still try and refer out. Like I said, there's not enough research, and like my own journey that I've been through so many GPs and gynos and seen everybody under the sun. But obviously within our scope of practice, there's only so much we can do. So no period by the age of 15. So if you're working with like young athletes, that's called primary amenorrhea, and then secondary amenorrhea, which is what I had. So it means that you haven't had a period for at least 3 months. And again, there's considerations into that, i.e. post-pregnancy, breastfeeding, and some other hormonal changes as well. But like if somebody has PCOS, you do want to try and still help them get that regular cycle as well. So periods not occurring on a regular basis, painful periods to the point of it disrupts day-to-day activities. Like everybody's like, pain is normal, but it's not. And that's when it's becoming a lot more aware now, which is good because this topic hopefully isn't as taboo anymore. But if it's to the point where it's debilitating people's day-to-day activities, we really want to get that looked at as well. And then heavy flow, not only for the reason of that sucks and it's uncomfortable, but like iron levels, energy levels, and how much like you're losing through that. So that's greater than 7 days, and it's filling up a pad or tampon greater than every 2 hours as well. So there are a few key things to try and remember that we can refer out for. Now, because there's not enough research in this space, sadly, we kind of just have to use like a lot of our own clinical reasoning, a lot of the tracking of the individual, and then what we understand with load management to try and apply for training. So when it comes to clinical reasoning, when we go through certain like athletes programs or a certain patient, maybe they're older and they're going through perimenopause and it's a little bit out of whack their cycle, we need to take what we know and where the hormones work best in training and then apply it to the individual's case as well. So even if you have the best training program and understand the hormones, you still have that patient and it's mostly about them and their goals, and we just need to apply clinical reasoning and load management to suit them and their needs. And I think that's the biggest thing. The textbooks aren't perfect for this, and it's really on an individual basis. This was one of my favorite facts. So many gold medals have been made by women in all phases of their cycle, including women that menstruate. And just in the Olympics just gone, I've told these guys this as well, but um, everybody knows Simone Biles, but Simone Biles and Jordan Charles won a gold medal, and they put up a post on Instagram, and then Jordan's comment was like, and that was on my period too. And I was like, I love that. She's preaching, she's just won a gold medal whilst on her period. So it doesn't matter where you are in your cycle, you can still smash your goals. Okay, and number 3 is application to training. So we have understanding our cycle, tracking your cycle, and now applying what you've learned in those spaces to application 2. So phase 1, that should be days 1 to 7. Sorry. Menstrual phase, days 1 to 7. So OMP is your estrogen and progesterone. They're low. They're at their lowest. Your energy will match your hormones. So your energy is at their lowest as well. But surprisingly, you can make some of your greatest strength gains during your low hormone phase. So during this phase, you actually want to be trying to do some strength if you can. But again, this is on an individual basis. And what 1 month might look like for you might be different to the next month as well. It's actually pretty interesting. You might see that if you've had a month where you have indulged a little bit more, had a little bit more alcohol, there's a little bit more inflammation in your body, you actually may find that your period is worse off that month too. So even though we say strength is great in this phase and you can make some of your greatest strength gains during this week, it's also on an individual basis. So if you can't do any strength, I would highly suggest still trying to do some walking, stretching, Pilates, yoga, something to get your body moving and trying to get some oxygenated blood flowing around the areas of your abdomen and your pelvis as well, because that can help alleviate your back cramps and some of your abdominal cramps as well. And research has showed that movement and stretching is good too. Again, it might be 1 or 2 days where you're like, no, that's not for me. I'm just going to do the fetal position. And then on the lighter days of bleeding, you can get in the gym and give that a crack. So that's your menstrual phase. Then your follicular phase. So once your bleeding has stopped, your estrogen and your follicular stimulating hormone is starting to increase, and your energy is matching that increase as well. So some people like to look at the menstrual cycle in 2 phases rather than 4. And the first phase is known as the follicular phase. And in this first phase, so the menstrual and the follicular, your body is actually able to access carbohydrates better and utilize and process these better. So during this time, it's also great to do high intensity interval training and go for your runs as well. So not only is it the best stages for strength and build your muscular strength, you can also attack your HIIT. There's a big thing around like hybrid athletes. So if you are looking at like a hybrid based training cycle, I guess, you can split that up that way. Or if they are a runner, you might deload them slightly in the menstrual phase and then start to build up their peaks and their longer runs during this phase. So if you look at like a 4-week plan, this might be where their longer runs are. And then as they go into the lead up to their period, it might decrease slightly as well. So again, it's basing it on the individual, but you might look at it in 2 phases, the menstrual and follicular as one group, which we've just gone through. So strength is high, HIIT, go for it. And then we'll look at the next phase as well. So now you have your ovulation phase. So ovulation, your hormones peak and then they'll start to drop off. So when you hit your ovulation, you'll probably have your energy peaking. You want to hit your strength. You want to go absolutely for it. You can go for your PBs and everything. But then for the rest of the ovulation phase, you'll probably start to feel that decline. So once you hit ovulation, the energy will start decreasing. And something that's actually quite interesting in this phase is because your hormones reach their peak and they're at their highest, you're actually more lax during this phase as well. So women are like 3 to 6 more times more likely to do their ACL in this phase than men are, which is really interesting because if you were to ask like one of your ACL patients that's female where they were in their cycle, they could have more than likely been in this phase, which is quite interesting. So in this phase, if you are doing your strength, or if you're going for your runs or anything, you want to make sure you also have a really good warm up and cool down as well to make sure that you are priming your body. And then that brings us into the luteal phase. So this is the final week leading back up to your period. Some people find that during this week, their symptoms are actually worse than the period themselves. So on those last few days, from days 25 to 28, let's say, they will actually feel worse. And then once their bleed starts, they'll start to feel better. So estrogen and progesterone are declining, energy is matching that. And during this phase, as everything is decreasing, steady state exercise is actually the best. So if you have a strength-based athlete, you would have reached your peak the week before and as you reach ovulation. And this is where you would start deloading and maybe doing some higher repetitions, lower weight, steady state kind of exercise. Or say you have a runner, like a cardio-based athlete, this is where you would start to decrease and work on that steady state-based stuff as well, hopefully where they can still like hold a conversation. During this phase, it's actually harder for women to like thermoregulate. So our temperature sits naturally a little bit higher and then we'll drop off, and we sweat more and we just find it harder to regulate our breathing and everything during this phase as well. So that's why steady state is best during this time. So what does that look like overall? Here's a little bit of a table to try and help you like break it down because I know it is a lot. So menstruation, whilst everything is shedding and your hormones are low, go for the strength if you're feeling it, or try and find some alternative that matches where you're at the time and where your symptoms are. Follicular phase, go for the strength, begin to build up to your PBs, begin to build up intensity in your HIIT and your runs, go for your endurance. And then ovulation, you want to peak, and then you want to start decreasing to more moderate, steady state-based exercises as you lead back into your period as well. Again, I like to just have a look at an overview. So here's it now with the hormones. So then you can see where you are in your cycle, what the hormones are doing, and how you can apply that. So I've based this off like a hybrid-based athlete, but like I was explaining throughout, if you have a strength-based athlete or if you have like a cardio-based athlete, say they're going to run a marathon, how you would then apply that around their training as well. So that is the gist of it. Wanted to make sure it wasn't too much, but do you guys have any questions at all? Perfect.
I have a question.
Yes.
Don't mind kettle boiling. Just let me step outside for a second. Okay, so how does the cycle and the phases change when someone falls pregnant? Like, what cycles and phases do they experience and how do these change?
That is a great question. So, when you're pregnant, you obviously aren't really going through a cycle because there's no more like shedding of the uterus, if that makes sense. So, because the implantation has occurred, you're now growing a baby, and your hormones, I don't like saying this, but they're kind of just like increasing and going a little bit crazy anyway. So like if you were to look at, like I literally had some blood tests done yesterday. If you were to look at all of my hormones, that like my progesterone and everything are way higher than they would be in my normal cycle because I'm now growing fetus and baby. So fetus and baby, just one fetus, one baby, just one.
Is there something you're not telling us?
Because I'm growing fetus. So everything is way higher. My hormones are way higher to try and support the growth. So I'm actually not going through a monthly cycle per se anymore. So adapting this, I would just say base it off the trimesters and how that mama is feeling throughout anyway.
Fabulous.
Yes.
So
Well,
the
that's a really
phases
good
kind of
question.
disappear, basically, and then get put on hold.
Pretty much, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I would say yes. And then unlike these guys that are just on a 24-hour hormone cycle, lucky them.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If only.
If only. Yes.
I
Okay.
also have another question.
Yeah, go for it.
What did you find felt patients most like help them feel most comfortable when opening up to you about these things? Like what approaches and
That's a
things?
really good question. So it is really hard. Sometimes you can just tell from the patient's vibe that they probably won't want to go into this in the first session. Other people you will have come straight in and they'll just open up straight about everything that's ever happened to them. Yes. So what I would say is, and these guys don't like this either, but making sure you're like using proper terminology. So if they are getting like pelvic pain or period pain or anything, and you're beginning to ask them questions around their cycle, make sure you're using words like cycle and not your rags. And then if you are asking questions like around their, so if we're talking about pelvic floor health, around their like bowel movements, make sure you're using the word bowel and showing them the Bristol stool chart and being like, where would you sit like in regards to types, rather than what does your poo look like? So you just have to make sure you're using the correct terminologies. And if you speak to them like it's a normal thing, they will more than likely open up to you. And then once you like ask about that surface level, like if you go, what does your cycle look like? How many days? And they can speak to you confidently about that, then I would ask them prompting questions like, okay, so how heavy would you say like it is? And then if that's okay, do you see any clots? So start lighter with correct terminology, see how they respond, and then you can build a little bit deeper. Sometimes it does take a couple of sessions, like I said. Other times they'll go straight off the bat. So you really just have to read the individual, but I find that helps. And if you say to them, like, you're desensitized to this, like, this is literally your job, share as much as you want. And then if you say, if you don't feel comfortable, please just let me know and we don't have to answer these questions. They also feel like they can open up more as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions before Andy goes?
I also had a question.
Yes.
How does like being on birth control or other forms of contraceptive affect your hormones and like planning training around that?
Yeah. So this is like a whole nother can of worms in themselves. So it is really hard to like categorize and generalize that because there's so many different types of contraceptions. So like you have the IUD, which is like hormonal. You have one that's copper, which is non-hormonal, and that's one that just kills the sperm. You have like the mini pill, you have the pill, like the normal pill. There's so many different types of contraceptions, and all of them do impact hormones differently. So like I said, how sometimes they will have a withdrawal bleed, but some women will like skip their period on the pill and then have the period at a different time each month, or they will have spotting throughout, which isn't a normal bleed, but it's like the way their body's adapted to the IUD. It is really hard to try and understand what the hormones are doing, but I would say even though they are on contraception, see what their symptoms are and what their body is doing throughout the month and try and base it off that. I know that's a really broad answer, but it's like everybody's body will react differently to the contraception as well. Like how I react to the pill might be different to how Andy and Josh react to the pill. So it would be different things.
I should hope so.
But it will be very different for each individual too. So you want to make sure that you're tracking them as an individual.
I also had one more question about after pregnancy, do the hormones and the hormone cycle come back immediately after?
So that's a great question as well. So I would love to say yes, but these postpartum hairs say otherwise. But it really depends on if you're breastfeeding, how regularly your baby feeds, what your other like nutrient levels are like. So like what your iron levels are like, what your progesterone goes back to. It all depends on like the individuals and themselves as well. So some people can get their period back like quite literally a couple of weeks after birth. I took forever. I took a year and a half and I had to go on this naturopath thing and I had to stop breastfeeding and everything to try and get it. So it's like, again, very individualized, which I know is so bad, but some people can get their hormones back to normal straight after, even if they are breastfeeding. and they can start to regulate theirs. Other people, it might take longer. And if you're breastfeeding for longer, your prolactin levels, which is like the breastfeeding hormone, that will stay higher, which will actually not allow your progesterone and estrogen to increase because you're still supporting another life. They don't want you to get like pregnant straight away. So those levels are going to stay lower. So your hormones won't go back to this like monthly cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No, that's okay. So that's another thing. Like, it's not just like menstruation and pregnancy, but also postpartum women and like breastfeeding women. You have to try and adapt a little bit as well, because their energy is going to be quite different to either one of these cycles too. Okay.
Now,
I have.
go
Go for it.
Go, Lara.
I've seen the looks
Sorry,
behind your
last
eyes for the
question.
last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I love questions.
So again, I know this one is going to be very individualized, but I guess just in general, do you have any tips for like women then trying to manage pain during their training, during like the menstrual phase and throughout the whole cycle, but like that phase in particular?
Yeah. Wait, what was that in particular? Sorry.
So like how they can like tips and advice to manage their pain.
Yeah, so I actually have a great little ebook which I'll get the boys maybe to put on school, but it really depends on what their symptoms are and what their pains are. So if that is like, say that's headaches, so you can be taking like aspirin like 7 days leading up to it, and then when you are on your period, you want to try and make sure you're having high nitric oxide foods, which I know is a gobful, but
Beetroot.
Yeah, beetroot's great. So that can really help leading up to it if you get like migraines. And then if you do get cramps, just making sure, like I said, about the oxygenated blood flowing, you can be using heat packs. If you're trying to train, you can have like the sticky heat pads and stuff on there as well. Little things like that can help you at least move, but then hopefully decrease some of the pain as well. Say, because some women get like pain when they're super bloated. Bloating has to do with fluid retention. Like, it is quite normal when you're on your period, but try and avoid salty foods the week leading up to it and during it, even though you probably just want to eat a packet of chips. Like, the salty foods will make more fluid retention and cause greater bloating in that time as well. So there's so many like little symptoms and tips, and it really depends on where their pain is stemming from, whether it is actually the shedding of the uterus or if it is other things that are going on around it. But we can get some symptoms and tips chucked up onto school.
We will post an ebook. We will not give tips.
Geordie said
the ebook.
Yeah, Geordie said upload this, and
Morpeth et al. 2024 said that.
That's actually a really cool point around the nitric oxide stuff, because that's blood flow, right? Like that's a vasodilator.
Yeah.
So like you're increasing blood flow there, you're increasing blood flow with heat, getting the movement out that way.
Yeah, which it's really interesting. But if you drink lots of beetroot juice, your urine will change color as well.
Yeah, to a really weird one. Really weird color. Yeah.
Barocca.
Yeah.
Worse than that one.
It's worse than the Barocca, right?
Speaking of, because I guess we do have some questions there that came in prior, and I guess one of the ones is about nutritional considerations for each phase. Do you talk about this a lot as far as like fueling for certain phases? Because you mentioned about the energy demands and where you're likely to see people have more energy and are likely going to hit more of their PBs and more higher intense exercises and stuff. Like, how do you counsel people around just general nutrition during each of the phases? If you could speak on that.
So I think one of the biggest things is like, everybody is like, I'm so hungry when I'm on my period and I'm ravenous and I just want to eat everything. That's actually normal as well, because your metabolism is higher during your menstruation phase as well. I forget the number off the top of my head right now, which is really bad, but your metabolism actually sits quite significantly higher. So you do need to be having more carbs in this phase, and your body actually metabolizes carbs better in this phase anyway, to make sure that you're fueling your body. So that is one of the biggest key things. If you were to think about two things nutrition-wise in the cycle, I would say carbs during your menstrual phase, or at least just the first half, so in the follicular phase. And then the second thing I would say is making sure that during around your ovulation and going into your luteal phase, when thermoregulation is a little bit harder, making sure you're having enough water and salts. So during the phase where you're not as bloated, you can have more salts because you will be sweating out a lot more. You need to make sure that your body can match the intensity of the exercise, and then making sure that it's able to recover and keep going as your energy is decreasing as well. So when you have water, you want to have 0.033 times your body weight plus 20% if you exercise. But
say the number again?
0.033 times your body weight plus 20% if you're exercising. But during this phase, you might want to put some salts or some hydrolytes or some electrolytes or something in your drinks. I personally love just coconut water at the moment. It's kind of my thing right now.
Does Gatorade matter? Sorry to interrupt you, but does Gatorade matter just because it's a bit more carby? Like,
to be honest, if you were to go a Gatorade, I have nothing against Gatorades, and again, a nutritionist might say otherwise, but if you were to go a Gatorade and you were to go the no sugar, and that's replenishing like your electrolytes and stuff, and you're exercising, I say go for it.
Because I think right now, like in most of the products, like a Hydrolyte Sports, for instance, only has about 4 grams of glucose in it, and it acts as an insulin spike to get stuff in.
Yeah.
You know, so you can get the insulin spike that allows the salt to carry across into the cell, which is very appropriate. But at the same time, you don't get the sugar crash.
Yes.
Which you might otherwise get from, say, like a Powerade or a Gatorade or something like that.
And sadly, women can't metabolize as well, and we do get insulin and glucose spikes. But if you're utilizing that energy in your session, I feel like it's okay. If you're just having, if you're just having a Powerade just because it's a yummy drink, I would then say question that, and maybe go the alternative of a hydrolyte or something instead. But if you're utilizing that sugar and energy, go for it. So they would be the 2 key things. Other than that, women need high amounts of protein all throughout their cycle, and fats as well. Like we need the fats too to keep our cycle and our hormones healthy. But they would be the 2 biggest things.
Are there any of your favorites? Like as far as that, or is it just like do you advocate for certain foods that have these properties that you would suggest to people as a blanket thing? Or is it like fat is fat, however you get it?
Like
carb,
there's definitely the good carbs, but more than having, and I've spoken briefly about this before to you guys, but more so than having specific meals or foods, I like something called carb coating, and it just makes your hormones a little bit happier because we can't metabolize carbs as well.
Extra content, guys. Here we go.
Here's a little bit more. And you would do this throughout your whole cycle as well, but sorry, pregnancy. But what you want to be doing is coating your carbs. So when you're eating your meal, you want to be having like your veggies, your veggies or your bittery greens first. So if you have your plate, say you've got, I don't know, steak, chips, salad, you want to eat your salad first, and then you want to be eating your protein. So you go for your steak next, and then you want to be eating your carbs. Then you eat your chips last. And basically what that's doing, your digestive enzymes are already working and metabolizing everything else that you've been eating. So by the time you get to the carbs, there's less of a glucose and insulin spike. Then you eat your desserts after that, once you've metabolized all the others, and that's when you eat your sugars and your not so good fats.
At the risk of turning this into a nutrition chat, because I don't want to do that, is there any particular changes in different phases of the cycle in regards to recommendations of amount of fats, especially for people who are training and maybe looking at being mindful of that for, like, say, weight class sports, things like that?
Yes, but I am going to be honest, and I can't give you the exact numbers throughout that.
That's good.
But yes. So overall, yes. I would research into that further. That is something to be mindful of, but I can't give you the exact numbers.
And I think in particular context of what Josh is saying about like your gymnasts, like all your, because I guess we actually have a lot of women, especially that come to us now, Tony, that are fighters, and you ever made it do boxing, do jiu-jitsu. And so it's there's the challenge of being able to balance what we're seeing on the thing in terms of, I guess, our how we balance the menstruation side of things, but then also to the performance side of things, as far as like what they have to do for the rigors of their sport, and we have to be able to juggle those things accordingly, correct?
And definitely.
That's where we have the benefit of having a professional, and we can go, hey, George.
So when retention is higher leading up to it, and they naturally retain more and don't process as well, so the week before, so they can't process carbs as well, they're retaining more fluid, that would be where you decrease. But in regards to specifics, I can't spit out.
No, that's cool. I'm thinking out loud as I go.
It's good that you guys are coming up with more questions on the questions.
That's it. And feel free, guys, if you guys want to chime in on this too, because I'm taking these ones from some of the ones we got from our socials and things like that, just to fill this thing out. But we also had another question about, does sleep get affected by any of these phases?
Yes, hormones impact your sleep massively.
Okay, fire away, Johnny.
So,
You haven't slept in 2.5 years.
what's sleep? No, I'm kidding. So I would say the two biggest considerations are when hormones are at the highest or when hormones are at the lowest is when your sleep is going to be most impacted. And again, this is something you can track during your cycle. So some people, when hormones at peak, they might actually have like insomnia during this time, and things might be heightened. Hormones just impact everything. Like things might be heightened when their hormones are at their peak, and they might have, or even vice versa, when they're at the lowest, they might have like anxiety, and they might be thinking over time, and they might get like more hot as their hotter as their thermoregulation isn't working as well, might receive night sweats or something on the other end of like menstruation. Their pains might impact them, and they can't actually get comfortable due to back cramps or stomach cramps as well. So I would definitely say sleep can be impacted at mostly both ends, like when the hormones are high or hormones are low. Again, very individualized based. And then if we take that not just like sleep within your cycle, but into, let's say, I don't know, pregnancy or breastfeeding women, which we touched on slightly, again, it will change not only when you have a baby, but during pregnancy as well. And all your hormones are increasing. Insomnia is another side effect as well. That is something that should be referred if it is like significant. You can do all the sleep hygiene things as well, which I think is great for a physio and EP to do. So there's 1,000,001 different sleep hygiene tips, and I would always ask if they're doing anything prior to bed before anyway, but simple things like room at 19 to 20 degrees,
Is that
making
primarily
sure
for like the thermoregulation stuff? Your theory is like the a night sweats and like and the body is running hot, like because there is I guess a litany of research that talks about the room being cooler, just having that sort of effect. So that could also help with that too.
Absolutely. So that will definitely help. So making sure you have that steady like temperature. And then just the simple ones like block out blinds, making sure there's no other stimulation. Like if it's not able to be quiet, have white noise so the brain isn't like waking up to any other sounds. Regular sleep and wake time so you have good circadian rhythm. I feel like you could go on.
Alcohol, caffeine, sleeping routines, scary
You can-
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, limit your scary movies.
Yeah. So there's all the general ones, definitely, but also, or like not organizing, trying to understand your hormones throughout the day will help your sleep throughout the night as well.
I have a little bit of a follow-up on that.
Love it.
Is there any, I had a second part to this question, but I can't remember it now. It's blanked me. But is there an effect or a mechanism anywhere where the menstrual cycle hormone changes have any effect on cortisol levels?
That is actually a really good question. So
I
don't, yeah, well, I don't actually know because like stress is obviously your cortisol.
It's like as you were talking about the sleep
the
hygiene and
anxiety
things like that, and
yeah.
like anxiety and all of this insomnia stuff, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, are we looking at adding extra stress to a system?
Yeah.
And is that then going to affect potentially downstream to the next cycle, the next phase, or even into training, right? Because we're looking at that's an added stress. Training's a stress. How do we marry all of that up appropriately?
Definitely. So like, again, I'm not 100% sure, but thinking about the cycle, like if your stress cortisol levels are too high, it can also impact your female hormones. So it might make your cycle irregular anyway. So that will be like one thing that you want to be checking. Also, I didn't say this, but try and get your like clients to get bloods done like every 6 months, just so you can also regulate everything else that's going on, like cortisol. So that, but then also there's other things like PMDD where people do get severe depression during your menstrual cycle as well, and their cortisol levels would be increased during that as well.
Can you spell out what PMDD is?
Premenstrual dysmenorrhea disorder.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
Triple
can't
word
say
score.
it properly.
Say that 10
all
times
the
real fast.
amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea,
Yeah.
amenorrhagia. I'm like,
So what you're talking about there is almost like it builds in this almost negative feedback loop of cortisol affects hormones, hormones affect cortisol, and then rinse and repeat. So what you're trying to intervene at from your level
yes.
is you're trying to break that feedback loop
Yes.
and give them a circuit breaker in that cycle.
Yes.
No pun intended, sorry.
That's
to then be able to move on. That was actually
no,
very
that
good.
was good.
Yeah,
and
because-
that's a perfect way of like,
Mm.
I think making those links with how that would work.
Because I can imagine in that instance, right, to try to simplify in my head as well, is like if the body feels safe, it's going to feel happier to go through the menstrual cycle. If the body feels stressed, it's going to be less inclined to want to engage in that, from what I would imagine. This is where we have like, previously we used to call it, the female athlete triad, but I guess, we've talked about now, I guess we refer to it as REDS. And I guess a lot of that is just, I guess from the outset, it's just a lot of stress on the system, okay? Because we don't have the fuel to fuel that engine.
Which is quite possibly a whole another seminar topic.
So what I was going to say is like REDS or the female athlete triad, that wouldn't only be cortisol, but cortisol does play in that. So when I said goes into an irregular cycle, but then also you have body fat percentage, body weight, iron levels, how much energy you're expending, training loads. Like, are you overtraining? Like, there's so many other things that then play into that. That then, impact that as well. Yeah.
It's like going
it's really
to,
interesting.
It's like going to Pancakes on the Rocks and just layering up more pancakes.
Most definitely. Now, the final question that we had here is like, like in the context of, I guess you've got a client who's going through some issues with managing their menstrual cycle and their training load. Who are some good people to have in your corner? So outside of a good exercise physiologist and perhaps a good physio, like, and this is really important for us because as far as like who we can refer to and try to build a team around these women, who would you recommend?
That's a great question. So I would recommend them having a good GP that they feel comfortable with. And that's purely because if they need further referrals or if they need bloods or anything done, sometimes it is really hard to find a GP that is happy to dive into this. So
once you find one, stick with them.
Yes.
Trust me.
Until they retire or die.
Stay with them. So having a good GP. And then I do love having alternate based medicine on your team as well. Like, and a good acupuncturist and naturopath, I have found really are happy to sit there, take the time and understand all of their symptoms and understand the woman themselves as well. I do obviously think there's time and place for the specialists as well that will dive deeper and do more tests and stuff. But I also like the alternative route. If you can help the individual not spend $300 for 5 minutes to see a specialist, but try and dive to the root causes of what's going on rather than just be diagnosed, yep, cool, see you later. But try and find out the root cause of what's happening and why. Then you can work as a team in that sense as well.
It's another tool in the toolbox, right? It's another perspective, right? You're not necessarily outweighing the medical system with like an acupuncturist, but it's allowing you to have another input into the whole system, which is that person, and act on it from different levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things that we often see within the specialization room, and this comes with like, if you want to call it like the academic hierarchy, is that when we have our specialists, the knowledge tends to be very, very siloed. So if you need a specific answer to a specific problem and a specialist required, very, very helpful. But I think one of the things that we're starting to see emerge now, not just in the health world, but also with I think what people are expecting out of services when it comes to physiotherapy and what they're getting for their dollar when they're after someone who can connect more dots, who's, to coin a term that we use a lot here at Profim University, is an expert generalist, someone who's a lot more holistic and connect the dots between what's going on in various aspects of that person's life and be a true holistic practitioner rather than someone who's just alternate. And this is where like a good naturopath is really, really good to have, because I mean, like, I think that some of the pathophysiology and I guess in the chemical and nutritional knowledge that a good naturopath has is on par with anyone else, and they can, and I can speak on behalf of myself and the amount of patients that I've had that have had really good, I guess, women, men going through these sorts, with women particularly going through these sorts of things, having a good naturopath on your team that can look at blood work and suggest a natural solution can be almost game changing your ability to impact that person depending on where you're at. So
Yeah, definitely.
Having those networks of that then also allow you to be able to actually partner with your patients along their journey, as opposed to, hey, this is no longer my area. I'm going to wash my hands of this and
go to
send
that
you on.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, like I know, especially with Geordie, we're very lucky that we co-manage a lot of the time. I know you two in particular, being at the same clinic, you co-manage a lot of the time, right? So they're both able to act in their own realms while still also being able to give the client in front of them the best care possible, right?
Yeah.
And then you're able, Andy, long-term patients, you long-term patients, partner with them for the long term.
And I think the biggest thing, like having other people in your corner, it's not like traditional westernized versus Chinese medicine or anything. I really think there needs to be a whole collaboration of each. And I know that's not technically what our textbooks say as allied health professionals. But it will be one of the best things to help the patient understand why, and then you can work as a team. So once you understand why, you can then apply everything that you're doing as a team to make like the best outcome for them.
You mentioned that it's not something that our allied health textbooks say, and you've heard us talk about this enough times, but there's far more to healthcare than what the textbooks tell us.
Yeah. Yeah. Like today, everything is so individual based, and this is based off an average, but
there's not a lot
there's
of
just so many layers.
And this is like, it's the artful application of the science, as we often say.
That's a segue there
That's
for
a
you.
segue.
That's
Now,
a segue.
Because as we wrap on up, okay, so we've had a lot of questions, and once again, guys, we want to thank you for your time. But really, to solidify your learning, yes, I'm gonna pick on a few people. So, Lara, while you're the first person on my screen, I'm gonna ask you to please unmute yourself and just share with us one thing that you've taken away from this that really stood out to you that you'll take into the future.
I think the one thing that really stood out for me was that nice table that you had up of just knowing when to be introducing that strength training, when to be increasing their load if they're a runner compared to, oh yeah, if you can put it yeah, I found that to be a super standout and really helpful, and also just really interesting the things like about that salt retention, that water retention throughout the different cycles of thermoregulation. It's like really, yeah, like good little things to be aware of. I thought it was a fantastic presentation, and I really loved it. I'm very interested. Now I'm all like, oh, women's health again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let's know when part 2 is about to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lara. Sabrina, can we ask the same of you? If you'd like to unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and if there's like one thing that really stood out to you that you can use as you finish your final year of going into final year of physio.
Yeah, I think because, in my unit, we don't cover a lot of pelvic health stuff. What I really took away is that as coming into a new grad physio, there's more that I can do, more that I can ask.
That's wonderful.
Before I pass on the patient to somebody who's more qualified in that sense.
Yeah.
So that was really eye-opening for me and really helpful in that sense. And I'm definitely more keen on exploring the area of pelvic health now.
I'm really
That's
glad.
awesome. I think one thing on that really quickly on physio in particular is that we're not taught these questions.
No.
Like from a physio's lens, just because you are a physio, we're not taught to ask these questions.
No.
Like unless you're blessed to be able to work alongside EPs, or I was also very lucky early in my career that I inherited a position at a dance clinic. So I was I was the only male there. I can't dance, just to be clear. I cannot. I can speak like 3 words of French. That's all I've got left. But like unless you're around that and you pick up those things, or you're willing to ask those questions, you'll never know. So I'm really glad to hear that you've expanded your vocabulary of questions. That's good.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
And so I just want to say, like, I didn't learn any of this stuff at uni either. This is done from like extra courses and stuff that I've done, and webinars that I've attended, and books and podcasts and stuff as well. So when we post the ebook in school, I can also put in some like podcasts and book recommendations too. I'm like registered by ESSA. You guys will be registered by APRA. So I'm not too sure what your courses are offered on there, but sometimes they'll have like webinars and courses that you can do, which is what I just top everything up with.
There are Facebook groups for physios and stuff as well, so you can always jump in those in particular. I know from memory, the APA has its own women's health Facebook group where they post a lot of those things, a lot of like what emerging research is out there is there. And I think ESSA has the same or something very
Yeah.
similar.
And
Yeah.
there's so many things like the Women's Health Collective, you can follow them and they run courses
Mm.
regularly and everything as well. And both EPs and physios can do them.
Mhm.
But yeah, sadly, none of this was done at uni. This was all research after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Can I just pick on one more person? Paris, one thing that stood out to you that you can then take away and implement on Friday.
I was going to pick up get Paris too. So
Yeah,
good.
cool.
On Friday,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let
what
me
are you
come
gonna
what am I doing on Friday?
What's one thing you can apply from this to your clients on Friday?
Oh,
Yeah, if a Wi-Fi doesn't die on us. Otherwise, I'll answer and I'll give you my takeaway.
Sure.
okay,
Oh,
so
sorry, no, go
one
Paris, go
thing,
Paris.
well, actually, I have two things. The first thing, obviously, no, the first thing is always like being able to approach them in a sophisticated and like I would say an educational way, but also like a rapport way where they feel like they can trust me and open up to about that. I feel like that's like step one.
Mm.
So I found that was super helpful. Any tips on that was great. And then also the tracking thing. I feel like being a woman, like obviously you know how hard it is. You don't really know what happened yesterday, let alone what happened 3 weeks ago. So ensuring an easy way for them to like track their cycle so that they can, like you said, if it's going to take 6 months or 9 months, 12 months to figure out, like piece things together, if there are red flags or something like that,
Mm.
tracking is super important. And the easier we can make it for them, the easier it will make our job so that we can help them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's
I love
pretty cool.
that.
No, that's really good. Thanks, Paz. I'm gonna add my takeaway in there just because I'm gonna mansplain
you
something.
have
Yeah,
female
exactly right. And that was gonna be my
engagement,
point.
yeah.
I think the thing. So not a lot of this was overly new information for me. Obviously, I've worked with females for a very long time. That's roughly 50% of the population. So
You always win my quizzes.
I do. I win every single quiz that Geordie does. So yes. I'm also really competitive, so that's probably why I probably Google the answers. I think what this did today, especially, was highlight the importance of the fact that no matter whether you're a male or a female practitioner, you have to be able to ask these questions. Because if a female is ready to open up, to your point earlier in your discussion, they're ready to open up, and you just need to ask the right question, and then it's just the floodgates open. If you don't take that step, you might be actually isolating them further, and that can actually create this cycle of this like shame and silence and things like that.
Yeah,
And distrust.
And sometimes it's only awkward if you make it awkward.
Yeah,
As a practitioner, like I've been asking these questions for a long time now. I've been doing this for a while, and I don't make it awkward at all.
No.
It's serious.
Because it's a serious conversation.
Yeah, if you were to able to have that conversation.
And if you ask that question, all you have to do is ask the question. And more often than not, as a male in particular, they don't find it weird unless you're like doing the whole like squirm in your seat, like
not making eye contact.
Not making eye contact. I'm just gonna type this out.
Yeah.
Like, if you just ask them like straight down
straight down the barrel.
Yeah, straight down the barrel in the eyes, and just go, hey, like, what's been going on? Like, tell me so I can help. Because at the end of the day, we're here to help.
Yeah.
And I can't help and I can't guide if I don't have the full picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And like, I don't want to go on another tangent, but like you understanding the cycle and the hormones have to do with pelvic floor. And if you've got women coming in with a lot of back pain and pelvis pain, the pelvic floor and the hormones and back to the cycle, you'll start to see a nice feedback loop, which is key as you guys are treating and training people as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, it's women aren't small men, so don't treat them as such. That's it.
We might get that tattoo. Oh, that's a screen. I'm going to screenshot that. I'm going to screenshot. That's your new contact image there.
That's it. Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, look, it's been an hour, and I just really want to just really honor and respect and really thank you for giving up your time and being with us here. And no doubt this will be the first of many webinars that Geordie will be doing. I think that already, just from the feedback in this group thus far, I think there's a tremendous amount of value here. But I think with this information, it gives us permission and it gives us the tools that we need to go ahead and be the best practitioners that we can damn well be, and help people that really, really need it. So I guess first of all, I want to thank Geordie for her time.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for everyone sitting at home for playing along with us. And if you found this really, really useful, okay, like I said, we don't ask for any money or these sorts of things, and because here's the thing, we want to try to expand spread as much knowledge as we can as we go forward with this, right? So if you found this really, really valuable, and you wanted to help us out, one of the best things that you can go ahead and do, first of all, right now, if you haven't already, jump onto Proform University, our Instagram handle, and give us a follow. Every little one helps. Secondly, while it's still free, on our link tree on the Proform University page, you can actually get access to our online education platform via a platform called School. And School is effectively an app you can download onto your phone, and there's a community there where people like myself and Geordie and Josh are continually posting on there, and we're trying to build our own community of allied health practitioners, our own community of medical practitioners, our own community of strength coaches and people that work in the fitness game, so we can all collaboratively work together as we stand on the edge of this new era of what healthcare is going to look like. Right, where we have more of this collaborative approach, we have more of this holistic involvement, and we can be the pioneer of a new health renaissance, which is going to be happening as people like Sabrina and Lara actually enter into the careers and as we start to progress forward. And if you go ahead and join that platform while it is still free, that would actually do us a lot of help, because it's on this platform that we have a host of other courses, one in particular, which is our flagship course called the Gemba. And the Gemba is what we believe is going to be the next game changer for a lot of people moving into the healthcare field and accelerating their careers so they can actually live out their potential and be the types of practitioners that they want to be. So you can learn more about the Gemba on the School platform there, as well as many, many other things by other contributors like myself, Geordie, and Josh on the School platform, and it is all there. So if I had to summarize those things in 3 simple points, give us a like and follow on Instagram. It's very, very helpful. Go and be a part of the School platform. And while you're there, check out the Gamba, because we actually started starting registrations for the new intake, which is happening in October. So if you want to be a part of that, you can learn all the information there. And if you have any questions, you can contact us from that perspective. Does that sound cool, guys? Quick thumbs up. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paris. Thanks. Well done. Just on that as well, this is not a one-hit wonder on the webinars.
100%.
We actually, Andy and I, as he mentioned earlier, we are
Go team.
Yeah, we're winding up next week.
Yep.
It's our turn. Not talking women's health, just to be very, very clear. We're going to be talking all things art of coaching.
Yep.
Which is a topic that's near and dear to our heart, and that can go in all sorts of directions, which will be really cool. And we also have, I can share this.
Yeah, you can share.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
We actually have a guest joining us in 2 weeks' time.
On the 18th?
On the 18th of September. His name is Yov, and he is from a company and an application called Heidi Health. Heidi Health is an AI note-taking piece of software, which has saved myself and Andy combined hundreds of hours already in less than 6 months in taking notes for us. And converting those into some documents for letters, referrals, all types of other things, correspondence. And he's actually going to be jumping on and giving us all a bit of a demo and a bit of a background as to what it's all about, how it can be used, what its use cases are, and how we can leverage that in healthcare, so that we're actually spending the time doing the things that matter, which is building relationships with our patients and our clients, and actually being able to guide them along their journey rather than doing the medico-legal obligations for ourselves.
Love it.
That's it, guys. So, guys, it's been real. Thank you so much for joining us. And look, stay in touch, because we want to see what we can do to help you more, okay? But other than that, it's us signing off.
Thank you.
Have a lovely night, guys.
Thanks,
Have a lovely evening, all right?
Thanks so much. You guys rock.
Bye.
Bye.
See you on Friday.